If you're looking for something different to plant in your shade garden that doesn't require a degree in horticulture to keep alive, just keep watching. I'm going to say right up front, I would never even try to grow a shade garden without ferns, hostas, hellebores, hydrangeas, heucheras, azaleas, all the regulars. But when I took over the stewardship of this amazing garden, I found an assortment of fabulous plants that were completely new to me. But they are here, happily growing in this garden. Now, for the sake of organization, I will first give you some woody shrubs, next herbaceous perennials, and finally a bulb. When you get the right plants in the right place, they really thrive. If you have watched any of my garden videos, you have probably picked up on my obsession with mountain laurel, Kalmia latifolia. This is not a bay laurel found in Mediterranean regions. These are native to North America. They like bright to full shade and moist, well-drained soil. They thrive in zones 4 through 8 and keep their dark green leaves all winter, rewarding me with the most unusual flowers that cover the plant in late spring. These are the dark pink ones I have shown in other videos. On the other side of the front bed, there is another mountain laurel with pale pink blossoms, but I've not seen those flowers since the summer of 2016. When the stonemasons were working on the front of the house, they brutally cut back that plant. That's the stump. Mountain laurel is notorious for being a slow grower, and the plant is just now recovering. I defended this other plant to the point of being a bit obnoxious, but am rewarded with beautiful blooms every summer. Hopefully the little one will recover and bloom again someday. If you choose to grow mountain laurel, you will probably need to be patient, but your patience will be rewarded. The next flowering shrub I will tell you about is the reason the chain link fence will never be removed. A lovely woody shrub called Clethra. Common names include summer sweet and sweet pepper bush. Clethra has beautiful, long-lasting, fragrant spires that cover the plant in mid to late summer. Mine is deciduous, but I understand there are some evergreen varieties. They are another North American native plant that can be found all the way from Florida to Maine and out to Texas, zones 4 through 9. Now, in early June, the buds are just beginning to appear, preparatory to blooming in a few weeks. They like part shade and moist soil, and this one does well near the horse chestnut tree. They are very attractive to bees. My husband actually took this picture, not some professional photographer. We park right in front of the bush and enjoy the entire show. Have you ever had the experience of looking at a flower and feeling compelled to touch it because it doesn't look real? For me, that flower is on Edgeworthia, or Chinese paper bush. I talked about it earlier this spring in March and April while it was blooming. These beautiful clusters of tiny yellow flowers erupt on bare stems and have an amazing fragrance. The buds set in late summer, and every fall my husband is always convinced they'll be blooming any minute. But they keep those buds all winter, waiting to be one of the first shrubs to bloom. My plant has been tucked under a redbud since we bought the house, but we removed the redbud this year, and my little Edgeworthia has been growing like an adolescent boy. This shrub only grows in zones 7 to 10, so it's not as hardy as some of the other shrubs I'm talking about today. Edgeworthia grows in full sun or part shade, a minimum of 2 to 6 hours of direct sun each day. I've learned it should not be consigned to deep shade if you want it to be happy. There are so many azaleas in my yard, it's hard to count them. but one in particular stands out, a deciduous azalea. Now, in case you're unfamiliar with azaleas, typical ones are evergreen, but one type of azalea loses its leaves in the winter. What is most interesting to me is the color, a pale apricot. Typical azaleas are white or the cooler shades of pink, red, and purple. The deciduous azaleas tend to have warmer colors, flowers that cluster similar to a rhododendron. They're in the same family. They are hardier and tolerate sunnier spots better. This is another native North American plant that grows in zones 4 through 8 and likes bright to part shade. As I recall, it's native to the Pacific Northwest. When I took over the garden, it was not in the best of health, but this little plant looks better every year. My last woody shrub is Kerria japonica, or Japanese Kerria. Up until recently, I thought it was a potentilla. Now, in my defense, in the foothills of Colorado, everything is a potentilla. I had to rewire my gardening brain when we moved here to Virginia. The bright yellow flowers on my Kerria can be seen all the way from the front yard, even though it's tucked back on the side of my house. It will grow in bright to full shade, zones 4 through 9, and likes well-drained soil. The good news and the bad news is it grows very quickly. What that means for me is that it frequently obstructs the passage along the narrow side of my house. So my husband has been known on several occasions to cut it back very harshly, all the way to the ground, which is what he did this week. When I whined about it, his response was, "Oh, it grows back fast." I'm thinking about propagating this plant and putting some of them in the backyard. It blooms profusely in mid-spring and the leaves are quite attractive. If you plan on growing one of these, be sure to give it room to spread out. But it's not a dense shrub or aggressive, so I would really like to try growing some other plants under it. Now for the herbaceous perennials. They die back completely in the winter and come back every spring. Common examples found in the shade garden are hostas and bleeding heart lilies. Again, I have all those, but these are the pleasant new surprises I found in the garden. Probably my favorite is the toad lily, Triceratops formosana. They bloom in the early fall and have flowers that look like little orchids all down the stems of the plant. This was last fall. I don't have words to describe how enchanting these flowers are. They like rich, moist soil, full to part shade, and grow in zones 4 through 9. My plant is on the corner where the side patio and the steps to the deck meet, so we're constantly walking past it. I suspect it started as one plant, but little baby plants are volunteering all around it. Everything I've read about the plant says it's easy to grow, and that has certainly been my experience. This is what my plant looks like right now in early June. Even without flowers, the leaves are an interesting addition to the garden. My only question is, why is everyone not growing these flowers? When they bloom in the fall, I promise you'll be seeing them in every video. Another favorite of mine is the hardy begonia, Begonia grandis. Mine are growing under the Virginia sweetspire in an area covered with vinca. It's hard to imagine anything could survive here, but they hold their own. Unlike annual begonias, these are hardy in zones 6 through 9. In late spring, the large, attractive leaves emerge, and the dangling pink flowers show up in the summer and remain until the first frost. Right now, in early June, this is what they look like. When the individual flowers drop their petals, the seed pods are still interesting, and I have volunteers that must have come from the seeds. It's not at all aggressive, but mine is spreading nicely through the vinca. It is a bit low growing, so its spot in my raised bed is perfect. If you've watched any of my other garden videos, you've probably heard me talk about the Acanthus. The common name is bear's breeches, which I think is a stupid name. The ancient Greeks found the leaves on this plant to be so beautiful they carved them in stone. Their shape is copied in the tops of Corinthian columns. As a result, the acanthus leaf is a prominent motif in classical design, so I immediately recognize it. It grows in zones 6 through 11, bright to part shade with well-drained soil. Mine send up the stately, long-lasting flowers in early June. This is what it looks like right now. There are 3 in the yard, 2 here in the side yard, and 1 in the back near the garden shed. These are easy care plants that I don't find to be aggressive. The flowers remain attractive even after they've died, but they do get really pokey. Nothing you want to handle without gloves. I'm also going to include a common bulb that I don't see people growing as often as they should. Hyacinthoides non-scripta, Spanish or English bluebell. It goes by both names since they are found growing in forests from northwestern Spain up through the British Isles. They grow in zones 5 through 8, like moist, well-drained soil and bright or part shade. They create lovely drifts of blue flowers in the late spring and then die back. Some people find them to be aggressive, but how can you get mad about something so beautiful, especially when it doesn't really choke out other things in my experience? I have large clumps of them in half a dozen spots in my yard. In those areas where I have vinca or ivy, the bluebells can defend their turf, but the vines cover up the bare spots when the leaves have decomposed. For plant number 10, I am bending my criteria. I did not find this plant in the garden when I moved here. I put it here myself. This is a perennial that's a leftover love from Colorado, Monkshood or Aconitum carmichaelii. It grows in zones 3 through 8. My home in Colorado was zone 5 in a good year. I bought that first monkshood from a Jackson Perkins catalog, having never seen the plant growing before, but they said it would grow for me, and sure enough, it poked its little head out in May and grew to be 5 feet tall with magnificent deep purple blooms in July. Unlike delphinium, the stems were relatively sturdy. It likes moist soil and part shade. I have this flower bed that's about 30 inches lower than the deck and wanted to plant something that would be really tall but not obstruct the view of the bird bath as it grew. When I saw the monkshood, I knew I had the solution and could hardly wait to get these 2 plants in the ground. They were growing well, but July came and went with no flowers, not even buds. And then August. I thought I had been sold bad plants until I did a little research. In Zone 7B, Northern Virginia, monkshood blooms in the fall. Sure enough, in September, I began to see buds and the plants bloomed in October. Now I find myself eager for fall in the garden with the arrival of monkshood and toad lily. If you find yourself ready for some new plants to experiment with in your shade garden, these are all guaranteed to delight. Real champions of Zone 7B shade gardens. Let me know in the comments what you like to grow in your shade and if you have any of these plants. Thanks for watching. See you next time.